Where does he use this mic? Jane and Michael plummet down the street. From the distance comes the sound of a police whistle. Jane and Michael running down the street. As they turn the corner, they run directly into a policeman who hurries off and answers the police whistle. The children dash off in the opposite direction. Jane and Michael come running toward camera down a long, narrow street. As they come in close, camera holds on their terrorized faces. Reverse shot as Jane and Michael run down the street and around a corner. The children turn the corner and find themselves in a dead end. An evil-looking old crone comes into scene. The police whistle sounds again off screen. Who's the crone? Travis.
Oh, I'm the
Damn it,
apparition.
Travis!
Who am I? Crone. Wrong lever. Wait, Crone. Wait.
Not that crone.
Crone. Where's that?
Fraser Crone.
Fraser Crone. Fraser Crone. I'm actually looking. Oh, Crone. Oh, there he is. Come with me, my dears, Granny. I'll send you a safe and sound.
Jane and Michael run across the bridge, spanning the river. They run down the steps and off into the distance. As they pass a building, they are confronted by a vicious, snarling dog. They turn and run back down the street. As they round a corner, they come to a sudden halt and look up in terror at a strange apparition. The apparition's face is smudged black, and peculiar brush-like forms protrude from it in every direction. Jane screams as the creature seizes both of them. Michael struggles ferociously.
Let her alone! You let my sister alone!
Easy now, your old friend ain't gonna arm you.
Terror-stricken, the children only fight the harder.
Come off it, Michael. Jane, look at yourself. You're getting all sooty.
Jane and Michael cease their struggles to look wonderingly at their captor.
But it's you.
In the flesh and at your service.
You're filthy!
Perhaps a smudge here and there. It happens to be today I'm a chimney sweep.
Oh, Bert, we're so frightened.
Don't take on. Bert'll look after you like I was your own father. Now, who's after you?
Father is.
What?
Father brought us to see his bank. I don't know what we did, but it must have been something dreadful. He was furious with us.
He sent the police after us, and the army, and everything.
Michael, don't exaggerate.
Now, there must be some mistake. Your father's a fine gentleman. He loves you.
I don't think so. You should have seen his face.
He doesn't like us at all.
Bert and the children sit down on some steps. He puts a comforting arm around the children.
You know, that doesn't seem very likely now, does it?
It's true.
You know, begging your pardon, the one my heart goes out to is your father. Here he is in that cold, heartless bank every day, hemmed up side by by mounds of cold, heartless money. And as the lady in the zoo said, I hate to see anything locked up in that cage.
Father, in a cage?
Yeah, they made cages in all shapes and sizes, you know. The bank shaped of them, some of them too, with carpets and all.
But Father's not in trouble. We are.
Sure of that, are you? Look at it this way. You've got your mother to look after you, and Mary Poppins and Constable Jones, and me. Who's looking after your father? Tell me that. If something terrible happens, who does he go to? He fends for himself, he does. And who does he tell about it? No one. Does he blab about his troubles and on? He just pushes on at his job, uncomplaining. Alone. Silent.
Father's not very silent.
Be still, you little beast. Oh, Bert, do you think Father needs help?
Oh, who knows? It's not my place to say. I only observe. The father can do with a bit of help. Come on, I'll see you home.
He takes the children by the hand and leads them up the steps. Dissolve. Exterior late afternoon on Cherry Tree Lane. Bert is coming through the park gates with Jane and Michael. A passerby stops to shake hands with Bert. Jane and Michael are interested by this.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim choo. There we go. Bring it in, Mary Poppins. Bring it in. Chimney, chim chimney, chim chim choo. A sweet rose is as lucky can be. Chimney, chim chimney, chim chim choo. Good luck will rub off when I shake hands with you. Yes, and that's lucky too. There's a lot of life has been strong. On the bottommost rung. Now I spent me time in the ashes and smoke. And this is the wide world, there's no happier below. When I shake hands with you. Deep whistles will cry, yes I do. A broom for the shaft and a broom for the flu. There where the smoke is all blue. There's hardly no day, no hardly no night. There's things out in shadow and halfway on the rooftops of London. What a sight. Now we feel happier Carafun.com.
Page 165 is where we've left off. I'll let you take it from here, Doug. And now I'll sign off.
Ellen is helping Mrs. Banks pin on one of her banners.
See who it is, Ellen, and then send them away. I'm dreadfully late.
Bert starts to bid the children farewell.
Well, I'll be getting on now.
Oh, Bert, please stay till poor father comes home. He'll feel so much better if you shake hands with him.
Ellen opens the front door, then turns to Mrs. Banks in the background.
Damn it, Travis.
I'm sorry, my Ellen ears are Ellen in me. It's the children, Mom. The children have hurt my ears, but it's the children, Mom. Ma'am.
Good. It's you.
I thought they were with the father. You haven't been running off again, have you? If you knew how terribly it upsets me.
They haven't been exactly running away, Mum. They've had a bit of a fright, though. Need someone to look after them.
Why, of course. Mary Poppins will look after... No, it's her day out. Ellen, I wonder if...
Sorry, Mom. I ain't done me breast. Something.
The children look up at Bert wistfully.
Will you ask Mrs. Brill?
I wouldn't set root in that kitchen for 100 quid or id or I'll call it fucking quid. This area is bacon
Quid.
day.
It's motherfucking quid. Do you live on this planet?
Yes, but I'm not from Britain, ma'am. This
It's
area.
pronounced Britain.
This area is bacon gin, and you know how Cookie is.
You've been so kind about looking after these children.
Yes, Mum, but I got to be moving along. Lord Mayor has this stopped up chimney.
The chimney, of course. How clever of you to know. Drawer room chimney is in ghastly condition. Smokes incessantly.
The children giggle happily.
Thank you so much.
But
As Bert and the children stand looking at her,
Besides, it will amuse the children.
Mrs. Banks walks past Bert and the children.
the Lord Mayor is going to be terribly put out.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
Mrs. Banks turns to look back at them as she continues down the walk.
I really must hurry. Our gallant ladies in prison are waiting for me to lead them in song.
Bert and the children stand on the front doorstep. They look up at Bert as he perplexedly stands scratching his head.
Bye-bye, my darlings.
She waves back at the children.
See you at tea.
Bert puts down his brushes as Jane and Michael drape sheets over the furniture.
Are we gonna edit this part I already sang?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we do it again?
The children join him in front of the fireplace. They crouch down and peer into the blackened flue.
You must do alone.
I shouldn't like to go up there.
As Bert and the children look up into the blackened flue, camera shoots down to their upturned faces. Bert takes up one of his brushes.
Oh,
There. You see how wrong can people be? That's what you ought to call a doorway and place to enchantment. Up there, where the smoke is all billowed and curled, twixt pavement and stars, is the chimney sweep world. When there's oddly no day, no oddly no night, there's things half in shadow and halfway in light. On the rooftops of London, who? What a sight!
I wish we could go up there.
So do I. I like chimneys.
Rightly so, a chimney's a wondrous thing. It's built tall up there on the roof. And when the wind gets it just right, it blows across the top and it roars the smoke right off the flue.
Bert gives Michael the handle of the brush, which he has extended up the flue.
Here, get a fill on the end of this brush. It's like you got a whale on the end of the line, don't it?
Michael holds up onto the handle of the brush. Bert and Jane turn as they hear. Mary Poppins.
Michael, be careful.
Mary Poppins standing in the hall, taking off her gloves. She's wearing her hat and her umbrella, having just come in.
One never knows what may happen around a fireplace.
Bert and Jane are looking at Mary Poppins off screen when suddenly they hear a whoosh from the chimney. They turn to see Michael still holding the end of the brush as he flies up the chimney, out of sight. Plus, Mary Poppins as she looks off toward the fireplace.
Brother.
Michael comes flying out of the chimney, still holding onto the brush, and starts downward toward the roof. Close up next to the chimney as Michael's feet come into frame as he lands gently on the roof. He stands looking up the chimney in awe. Fireplace. Jane leans into the fireplace and peers up after Michael.
Michael! Michael!
Bert turns to look at Mary Poppins off screen.
That's awkward, I must say.
I'll think you to stop putting ideas in their head.
There is a second wish as Jane flies up the chimney out of scene.
There goes another one.
Shall I go after him?
Well, we can't have them hounding around the rooftop like kangaroos, can we? This isn't Australia.
Don't be frightened, Michael.
The children turn around suddenly, reacting to a third. Whoosh! Their faces are blackened and their clothes are covered with soot. They look up in awe and see Mary Poppins come shooting out of the chimney. She is holding her clothes umbrella straight up in the air. As she begins to descend to the rooftop, the umbrella opens automatically. Jane and Michael look up in wonder as Mary Poppins comes into frame feet first for a gentle landing beside the children. She holds out something to the children.
Kindly put your hats and coats on at once.
The chimney has a fourth whoosh, and out comes shooting, and Bert comes shooting out of the chimney. Jane and Michael look up in wonder as they struggle on into their coats. The children continue to look up as Bert descends feet first. Mary Poppins stands looking down at them as they struggle with their coats.
Hurry up, please. Spit spot.
The children manage to get their coats on as Bert lands on the rooftop beside Mary Poppins.
There
He looks
you
down
are.
at the children.
There you are. I thought I'd gone and left us.
We didn't mean to.
Their faces are smudged with soot. Mary Poppins looks at Bert disapprovingly.
No, I'm done. Truth is, this is what you might call a fortuitous circumstances. Look over there.
Camera pans across the rooftops. In the soft, gathering early dusk of London, there's a feeling of fantasy about it. Roofs and chimneys loom on all sides.
A trackless jungle. Just waiting to be explored.
Bert turns to Mary Poppins, who wears a look of disapproval.
Righto, Mary Poppins.
Oh, please. Oh, that's not me.
Oh, please, Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins takes out a small compact and begins to powder her face.
Expedition Attention! Attention? I thought it was German for a second. Left hand, quick march!
Led by Mary Poppins, the group marches through scene. Rooftop as Mary Poppins leads the group through and out of scene.
Trail arms!
She extends her umbrella, and the group imitates her lead by extending their brushes. Mary Poppins leads them across the rooftop and down the steep slope of the roof. As the group marches down the slope, stepping off its edge onto a flat adjoining roof covered with numerous chimneys. As Mary Poppins comes into scene, leading the group down a narrow aisle past the chimneys. Camera dollies back with Jane as she looks around. A moving shot of the many chimneys belching forth smoke. Reverse shot shooting down a narrow aisle between the tall chimneys as Mary Poppins comes into scene, leading the group toward camera. Michael stops to investigate one of the chimney pipes. As he peers into it, a sudden cloud of soot shoots forth into his face. Bert looks down at Michael.
It's just nice, clean soot, Michael.
Mary Poppins, the children, and Bert all join hands and dance along the edge of the roof. As they ascend the sloping peak, they disappear into a cloud of heavy smoke. The rooftop sticking out of the smoke cloud, Mary Poppins, Bert, and the children suddenly come out of the smoke cloud as they ascend the peaked roof. Mary Poppins, Bert, and the children reach the top. They slide on their heels down the other side of the sloping roof and step over to an adjoining peaked roof. The group walks single file along the length of the peaked roof toward the edge. A short way off in the background stands a towering church steeple. As they teeter along the steep peak, Bert yodels. The group stands before three smoking chimneys and look up at the towering steeple off screen.
As far as we go, right?
Not at all.
Michael and Jane watch Mary Poppins in wide-eyed wonder. The smoke from the chimney has taken the form of steps, and Mary Poppins leads the group up them.
Come along, Michael.
Mary Poppins, as she turns and waits for Michael, Michael steps cautiously onto the smoke stairway and follows Mary Poppins up and out of the scene. Jane comes into the scene, following Michael. They each cling to the handle of the chimney brush in front of them, forming a chain.
Do keep a steady line, please.
The group walk up the smoke stairway, nearing the top of the church steeple. Mary Poppins' brother and children step onto a small platform at the top of the steeple. They stand looking out over the city.
What did I tell you? There's the whole world at your feet.
The last rays of sunshine through the mist, bathing rooftops and steeples in a golden haze. As the sun disappears beyond the horizon, a few lights in the city begin to come on.
And whoever gets to see it, but the birds, the stars, and the chimney sweeps.
What a lovely sunset.
We must all come in out of the night air. Follow me, please.
Mary Poppins steps off the platform onto a cloud of smoke. Bert and the children follow, and the cloud begins to descend. Wide angle of Bert, Mary Poppins, and the children top the smoke cloud as it gently brings them down from the church steeple into background. We see the cloud as part of a long column of smoke streaming from one of the chimneys below.
Chim, chimney, chim, chim, cher-ee.
And you're with us, sleep.
Asleep.
POV of the rooftop below to include the chimney and column of smoke. Camera moves in and down, following the smoke column as it cyclones back into the chimney.
You're in
In
glad,
glad
company.
company.
Nowhere is there more happier crew than them. That's what we sing. Chim, chim,
Chim, chim, cheree.
chim,
Chim,
cher-ee.
cheroo.
Them that got wings. Chim, cher-ee, chim, cher-oo. Cher-oo, cher-oo, cher-oo.
Suddenly, from a dozen chimneys, a number of sweeps explode in black puffs of smoke. They are dressed like Bert, begrimed, grinning, and dancing fiercely. Acrobatic leaps, slides, towering, death-defying jumps around the rooftop areas. They have a wild Cockney song and dance.
Kick your knees up, step in time. Kick your knees up, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Kick your knees up, step in time.
Link your elbows.
Step in time, link your elbows, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Link your elbows, step in time.
Spin about.
Spin about, step in time. Spin about, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Spin about and step in time.
Round the chimney.
Down the
Round the chimney, step in time. Jump the chimney, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Round the chimney, step in time.
Admiral Boom is peering through his glass at the blackened, whirling dervishes on the neighboring rooftops. Binnacle and Barnacle are standing nearby with the gunners match at the ready.
Stand fast, gentlemen. We're being attacked by Hottentots.
Sir.
Cheeky devils. Give them the works.
Everything, sir.
Every scrap. Teach the beggars a lesson. Lively now.
Binnacle tilts the cannon back. Barnacle starts shoveling in signal flares, fairy lights, fuses, and powder. Bert and the sweeps continue their raucous dance.
Flap like a birdie.
Flap like a birdie, step in time. Flap like a birdie, step in time. Never need a rhyme. Flap like a birdie, step in time.
There's a tremendous roar from off screen, and the air is rent by balls of fire, clots of sparks, and exploding colors issuing from Admiral Boom's cannon. Bert sees Jane and leaps down the chimney. Another sweep grabs Michael and follows.
Down the chimney.
Down the chimney, step in time. Down the chimney, step in time.
The sweeps come bursting out of the fireplace, continue dancing gaily around the room. Two of them stand on either side of the fireplace to catch Mary Poppins as she pops in through the cloud of soot. Everyone, including the children, is dancing.
Hop on a foot, step in time. Hop on a
Hop on one foot,
foot,
step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Hop on one foot, step in time.
Wiggle your ears.
Waggle your
Wiggle
ears,
your ears, step in time. Wiggle your ears, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Wiggle your ears, step in time.
Will and Ellen come into the room. Cook lets out a scream as they are grabbed and brought into the dancing circle.
Step in time. Step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Step in time.
Mrs. Banks has just come in. She is standing with the Votes for Women ribbon across her front, looking into the living room.
Ellen, when you have a moment, I forgot my pamphlets.
A couple of the sweeps come up, bow gallantly, and draw her into the living room with the dance.
Thank you. But really, I don't think.
As they dance her gaily around the room,
Votes for
Votes
women.
for women.
Step in time, votes for women, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. Vote for women, step in time.
front doors open. Mr. Banks is coming in slowly, watching an incredulous expression on his face. Mrs. Brill looks off screen and sees Mr. Banks.
Oh, what's all? It's the master.
It's
It's the master, step in time. It's the master, step in time. Never need a reason, never need a rhyme. It's the master, step in time.
Mr. Banks, temporarily paralyzed by the sight, finally loosens a bellow of rage.
What is all this?
What is all this step in time? What is all this step in time?
The sweeps grab Mr. Banks, stands him, struggling vainly around the room. He wrenches himself loose. They dance past him out the open front door, pausing only to shake hands with him vigorously as they go.
Good luck, Governor. Good luck.
Good luck.
They all doff their caps going out, each revealing their stark white forehead atop of the smudged faces. Exterior street, as the dancing sweeps pour out of the Banks' house, still dancing, they go their frolicking way down the street away from camera, pausing here and there to seize an outraged policeman or a startled passerby and whirl them around and round. They go out of scene, some turning around the corner, some into the park. Mr. Banks, shattered, disheveled, his hands and coat covered with soot, is standing in the middle of the room looking around. Cook and Ellen have fled.
Oh, Father, I'm so glad you got home in time.
What? Time for what?
Every single one of those sweeps shook your hand. You're going to be the happiest, luckiest person in the world.
Mrs. Banks takes this opportunity to go out, covertly removing the Votes for Women ribbon, as she does.
I believe I'll just go upstairs and freshen up.
Winifred. Winifred.
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins, this is all your fault. Isn't it? Just a moment, Poppins. What is the meaning of this outrage?
Page, I beg your pardon.
Will you be good enough to explain all of this?
Oh, wait. What page are we? First of all, I should like to make one point quite clear.
181.
Yes.
Travis, clearly said the line. I never explain anything.
But
Come along, children. Split spots.
Mary Poppins and the children go out. The phone rings in the hall. Mr. Banks goes to it and lifts the receiver.
yes, Banks here. Yes, Mr. Dawes. Yes, sir. I am dreadfully sorry about what happened today. I can assure you. Tonight, sir.
At the bank, Dawes Jr. is on the phone talking to Mr. Banks. Mr. Dawes Sr. is at his side, prompting him.
We shall expect you precisely at 9 o'clock, Banks.
Without fail.
Without fail. Yes, Banks, I'm afraid it's extremely serious.
We forget this. We regret this course of action. After all, you've been with this company a good many years, as your father before you.
We regret this course of action. After all,
Mr. Banks listening with a sinking heart.
Yes, sir. Sir, does this mean that you wouldn't be needing me anymore? Yes, Mr. Dawes. I'll be there at 9 o'clock.
Mr. Banks hangs up the phone, stands quietly a moment. On the second floor, Jane and Michael look down through the banisters at their father. Mr. Banks comes slowly into the living room, sits down heavily. Bert is wrapping up his poles and bristles. Mr. Banks seems unaware of his presence.
A man has dreams of walking with giants to carve his niche in the edifice of time before the mortar of his zeal has a chance to congeal. The cup is dashed from his lips. The flame is snuffed, a burning. He's brought to rack and ruin in his prime. The prize is snatched from his grasp.
Ah, life's a rum go, governor. That's the truth.
Do you know what I think? It's that woman, Mary Poppins. From the moment she stepped into this house, things have begun happening to me.
Mary Poppins?
Yes, of course. My world was calm, well ordered, exemplary. Then came this woman with chaos in her wake. And now my life's ambitions go with one fell blow. It's quite a bit of pill to take. That's that Poppins woman. She did it.
I know the very person you mean. Mary Poppins is the one that sings. A spoonful of sugar that makes is all it takes. It changes bread and water into tea and cakes.
You see, that's exactly what I mean. Changing bread and water into tea and cakes, indeed, no wonder. Everything's coming unstrung around here.
A spoonful of sugar goes a long, long way. Have yourself a healthy helping every day. An healthy helping of trouble, if you ask me.
Know what she did? I realize it now. She tricked me into taking Jane and Michael on an outing. That's how all the trouble started.
Tricked you into taking the children on an outing? Outrageous! A man with all the important things you have to do? Shameful. A man of high position, esteemed by your peers? And when the little tykes are a-crying, you haven't got the time to dry their tears. And see them grateful little faces smiling at you because their dad, he knows just what to do. You know, I know, Governor, you've got to grind at that grindstone. And I thought though your childhood slips like the sands of a Steve, and all too soon you've grown and they've flown. And it's too late for you to give just a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. The medicine go down. The medicine go down. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down in a most delightful way. And that's all there. And that's all the other something Mary Poppins is taken about.
Bert has gathered up his things and goes to the hall.
Well,
He turns.
Good day to you, sir. Sorry to have troubled you.
He goes out. Mr. Banks, moved by Bert's song, sits quietly in his chair. After a moment, he looks up and off to Jane and Michael standing in the doorway of the hall.
Yes.
Jane and Michael come slowly into the room.
We're sorry about the tuppence.
Yes.
We didn't know we would cause you so much trouble.
It's all right. How could you know?
Mary Poppins, listening quietly on the stairs. In the front room, Jane takes her father's hand and places tuppence into it.
You can have the tuppence.
Mr. Banks stares down on the tuppence in his hand.
Will that make everything all right?
Yes, thank you. Good night.
The children go out. Mr. Banks looks at the tuppence resting in the palm of his hand. Street exterior, night, a lonely, darkened street. Mr. Banks is making his way to the bank. Approaching the bank, the area is deserted. He slowly walks the steps. At the door, a grim-faced custodian admits him to the interior of the establishment. Door of the boardroom, Mr. Banks pauses at the door a moment to pluck up heart, opens the door and goes in. Mr. Banks viewed Mr. Dawes Sr. and the board of directors seated at a massive table in the meeting room. One by one, the heads at the table turned toward him, shafts of light glinting off their glasses and pince-nez piercing the dark Edwardian gloom of the room. The faces are stern and intractable. Mr. Banks walks slowly, bravely toward the implacable faces. He stands before them, trying to gather his composure.
Good evening, gentlemen.
There is silence for a moment. Mr. Dawes Sr. pokes his son with the can.
Go on, get in on it. Get on with it.
Yes, father. In the year 1773, an official of this bank unwisely loaned a large sum of money to finance the shipment of tea to the American colonies. Do you know what happened?
Yes, sir. I do believe, sir. As the ship lay in Boston Harbor, a number of colonists dressed as Red Indians board the vessel, behaved in a discourteous manner, and threw all the tea overboard. This made the tea unsuitable for drinking even by Americans.
Precisely. The ICANN was defaulted. Panic ensued within these walls, and there was a run on the bank.
From that time till now, sir, there's never been a run on this bank until this morning. Run caused by the disgraceful conduct of your son. Do you deny it?
I do not, sir. I shall be glad to assume the responsibility for my son.
Well, what are you waiting for? Go on!
Mr. Dawes Jr., his face grim and expressionless, comes around to Mr. Banks and confronts him. Amid a deathly silence, he takes the rose from Mr. Banks' lapel and shreds it, the petals dropping to the floor. He takes the tightly furled umbrella from Mr. Banks' hand, undoes the clip, and begins to shake it out. Mr. Moosley and Mr. Cooh and Mr. Grubbs at the table. Mr. Moosley flinches.
No, not that.
Steady on.
Mr. Banks and Mr. Dawes Jr. Mr. Dawes takes the umbrella with a swift, cold movement of the handle, pulls it inside out, the ribs going awry in every direction. He hands the umbrella back to Mr. Banks, takes the bowler from his hand. Mr. Tomes at the table, averting his eyes. Mr. Dawes Jr. holds the bowler at arm's length and, with another swift movement, punches a hole through it. He hands the battered headpiece back to Mr. Banks. Dawes Jr. turns and resumes his place at the table.
Do you have anything to say, Banks?
Well, sir, when there's nothing to say, all you can say is,
Standing, shaken but unbowed, he has found something in his pocket. Surprised, he looks down to Jane and Michael's tuppence, resting in the palm of his hand.
Confound it, Banks! I said, do you have anything to say?
Mr. Banks begins to snicker. The members of the board, aghast, look at each other in wonder.
just one word, sir.
Yes?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
What?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Mary Poppins was right. Extraordinary. It does make you feel better.
What are you talking about, man? There's no such a word.
No, Mr. Dawes. It is a word, a perfectly good word. Actually, you know what there's no such thing as? With all due respect, sir, it turns out there's no such thing as you.
Impertinent, sir.
Speaking of impertinence, sir, would you like to hear a marvelous joke? A real snapper?
Joke? Snapper?
Well, sir, these two perfectly marvelous young people named Jane and Michael met one another on the street. Jane says to Michael, I know a man with a wooden leg named Smith. And Michael says, really? What's the name of his other leg?
He's gone mad. Call the guard. Banks, stop. Don't come near me.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I'm feeling better all the time.
Don't you dare strike my father, Banks.
Mr. Banks seizes Mr. Dawes Sr.'s hand, opens the clutching fingers, and thrusts the tuppence into his hand.
There's the tuppence, Mr. Dawes. The wonderful, fateful, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious tuppence. Guard it well. Goodbye.
Banks, where you going?
I don't know. I might pop through a chalk pavement picture. I might seize a horse off a merry-go-round and win the derby. I might just go fly a kite. Only Mary Poppins would know.
Poppins?
Mr. Banks cocks the battered bowler on his head, twirls the desecrated umbrella jauntily, and heads off for the door.
Yes, our nanny, of course. She's the one who sings that ridiculous song. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, the medicine go down.
He goes out. They stare after him.
Mad as a March hare. Father,
He is deep in contemplation.
The wooden leg needs Smith.
He looks down to the tuppence in his gnarled hand. A large wrangle featuring Mr. Dawes Sr. with the son and the others hovering apprehensively about him. Mr. Dawes Sr. snickers, then begins to cackle in a high, reedy voice.
Father, what is it?
A wooden leg named Smith.
He bursts into dry, heaving peals of laughter. And as he laughs, Mr. Dawes Sr. begins to float upwards. They try to seize and hold him in his chair.
Stop it. Come down.
Mr. Dawes Sr. bubbles with uncontrollable laughter and slowly wafts upwards. The partners try to bring him down. Camera slowly moves back. The next morning, close on the weather vane, atop Admiral Boom's house, the wind, which has been blowing steadily from the east, falters. The vane bobbles aimlessly for a moment, then turns and steadies as a fresh breeze comes in from the west. Close on Admiral Boom is squinting up at it.
Winds come around, lad, blowing dead on from the west.
Jane and Michael forlornly watch Mary Poppins pack her things.
She doesn't care what happens to us.
She only promised to stay until the wind changed. Isn't that so, Mary Poppins?
Mary Poppins continues putting her personal effects into the carpet bag without looking at the children.
Will you bring me my hat stand, please?
They pick up the hat stand.
Mary Poppins, you don't love us. Meh.
She pauses for a moment, looking at the unhappy children. There's a fleeting moment of tenderness in which we see how much she does love Jane and Michael. Then it's gone.
May I ask what would happen to me if I left all the children that were taken from me?
She puts down the hat stand in her carpet bag. As she pushes it down, it pushes up a hairbrush, which she catches. From the hallway, Constable Jones is at the telephone, speaking and occasionally referring to his notebook.
That's right, sir. George W. Banks, number 17 Cherry Tree Lane. Oh, I should think about 6'1", sir.
Angle widens as camera pulls back to include Mrs. Banks extremely distraught as she crosses to where Ellen and Mrs. Brill are standing.
Yes, sir. We rang his bank first thing this morning. Only thing we discovered, sir, he had been discharged last night.
Camera with Mrs. Banks as she joins Ellen and Mrs. Brill, both of whom are wringing their hands and making sounds of distress.
No telling what might have done in a fit of despondency.
Wouldn't hurt to have them drag the river there a nice bit there by South Park Bridge, that popular with jumpers.
Ellen subsides as Mrs. Brill, with a warning glance at Mrs. Banks, jabs Ellen sharply in the ribs.
Helen, please.
Close on Constable Jones.
He seems to have been a fine, stable gentleman, sir. No hanky-panky, if you know what I mean.
In the direction of the cellar, off screen comes the sound of Mr. Banks singing lutely in a raucous, operatic fashion.
For a spoonful of sugar, la 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 la.
Regular habits as far as anyone knows.
Mrs. Banks, Ellen, and Mrs. Brill all look toward the cellar with startled expressions.
For la 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 la.
Mrs. Banks, could we have a little less noise on the premises? I can't make out what the inspector is saying.
In the cellar, there's a sound of footsteps on the stairs and Mr. Banks off-screen singing. The cellar door is slightly ajar.
La 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 la.
Mrs. Banks reacts happily to the off-screen sounds.
It's him!
Or something that sounds like him.
Mr. Banks appears in the doorway. He is smudged, rumpled, and disheveled. He is still wearing the bowler with the broken flapping crown. With one hand, he is concealing something behind his back.
La la for la 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 la.
Mrs. Banks, Ellen, and Cook react with surprise at his appearance.
George.
She rushes to him, throwing her arms around his neck. He still holds the mysterious object behind his back. They kiss.
Oh, George, you didn't jump into the river. How very sensible.
It's all right, sir. He's just been found. No, alive, sir. Or so I presume. He's kissing Mrs. Banks.
George, I've been so worried. What happened at the bank?
Mr. Banks has put the object he has been holding down near the cellar door. He picks up his wife and whirls her around merrily.
La 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 la. I've been sacked, my dear. Discharged, flung into the street. Fa la 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 la.
Close on Ellen and Mrs. Brill.
Oh, round the bend. That's done. Toddy, as you please. Toddy, as you please.
George, what on earth have you been doing in the cellar?
Just a moment, my dear. Where are the children? Jane, Michael.
Mary Poppins is finishing her packing. The children turn and look off to the sound of Mr. Banks calling.
Jane, Michael. Who's that?
Your father's calling you.
It does sound like father. Jane, Michael.
It is father.
She turns and runs out. Michael stands hesitantly a moment, looking up at Mary Poppins.
You won't go.
Run along, Michael. Spit spots.
Jane and Michael race down the stairs. They stop on the landing to look down at their father. Their view of Mr. and Mrs. Banks looking up toward the landing. Mr. Banks is holding the object behind his back. He brings it forward slowly. It is the children's kite, once battered and broken, now restored to its former glory. Michael and Jane on the landing.
He mended it.
They dash down the stairs. Mr. and Mrs. Banks watch the children come bounding down the stairs toward them. Michael takes the kite and inspects it. Jane looks up at her father.
It's wonderful. How did you manage it?
With tuppence for paper and strings, you can have your own set of wings. With your feet on the ground, you're a bird in flight. With your fist holding tight to the string of your kite.
Oh, please, may we fly it?
Mr. Banks takes the children by the hand as Mrs. Banks looks on with pleasure.
Up and paper and strings. Have your own set of wings. Feet on the ground. With your fist holding tight to the string of your
Well, I said, sir, go fly and high. No, not you personally, sir. Let's go fly a kite.
Flying a kite, all at once you're higher than air. You can dance on the breeze over houses and trees. With your fist holding tight to the string of your kite. Let's up through the atmosphere.
Ah, there you are, Mr. Banks.
Their view of the banking partners, Dawes Jr., Tomes, Moosley, and Grubbs, who are all in holiday mood, happily all clinging to kite strings. Mr. Dawes Sr. is not present.
I want to congratulate you. Capital bit of humor, that. A wooden leg named Smith or Jones, whatever it was. Father died laughing.
Close on Mr. and Mrs. Banks, reacting sadly.
Hey, I'm so sorry.
Nonsense, nothing to be sorry about. Never saw father so happy in his life. Left us with an opening for a new partner. Congratulations again.
Mrs. Banks kisses her husband on the cheek.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Exterior Banks' house as Mary Poppins comes out of the house and looks off to the park. Her POV of the area in front of the park gates, she sees the colorful area of kite flyers. The Banks family in a happy group, Mary Poppins, and the parrot head umbrella.
Somebody be the parrot head.
That's gratitude for you. Didn't even say goodbye.
Quite true.
Look at them. They think more of their father than they do of you.
Oh, that's as it should be, don't you think?
Don't you care?
Practically perfect people never permit sentiment to muddle their thinking.
Is that so? You don't fool me a bit.
Really?
Yes, really. I know what these children mean to you. And if you think I'm going to keep still any longer. Mary Poppins reached out and pulled the drawstring around the parrot head's neck, talked, effectively cutting off his speech.
That will be quite enough of that, thank you.
Mary Poppins turns the umbrella over and opens it. As she does, a gust of wind comes in and wafts her into the air. She rises gracefully from the doorstep and drifts upward toward the park area. Close shot on Andrew as he sits watching Mary Poppins descend. Bert, as at his place near the park gates, he looks up to see his view of Mary Poppins clinging to her umbrella, rising among the colorful array of kites in the sky. Bert?
Goodbye, Mary Poppins. Don't stay away too long.
And he blows her a kiss. Mary Poppins looks back and smiles slightly. She drifts, turning slowly this way and that, away from camera. Long shot of Mary Poppins outlined in the rays of the morning sun as she walks past St. Paul's Cathedral. A cloud of birds rise to provide her escort through the London sky. As end title comes, overseen. Fade out.
Oh my god. Thank you for joining us. I apologize for the extremely long read, but I had a great time with one of my favorite childhood movies. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.
We did it.